I was alone in the house for an entire week when I was a teenager. That wasn't normal for my family. My parents rarely went anywhere, let alone left town for days at a time. But one of my mom's wealthy friends had invited them on a trip and paid for everything. They decided to go. I stayed behind. I was an only child, so there was no one else in the house. Just me, and a lot of empty rooms. We lived in Newark, Ohio, in Licking County. Yes, that was actually the name. Our house sat on a quiet road where only a few cars passed each day. Behind the house was a large backyard that led straight into woods. Not hiking trail woods. Not park woods. The kind of woods that swallowed sound. We had a big wooden deck in the backyard. From it, you could see the entire yard, the above-ground pool, a small fish pond, and then nothing but trees. Once the sun went down, the woods became a solid wall of darkness. This happened on a Thursday night in July of 2013. I remember that because earlier that day I had been texting friends about weekend plans. Everything felt normal, relaxed, safe. That night, I was sitting alone on the deck. I had my speaker playing music, and I was smoking weed. The air was warm. The bugs were loud. I felt calm in that lazy, summer night way. Then I thought I heard something that didn't belong. A voice. At first, I wasn't sure. I lowered the music slightly and listened. The sound didn't repeat, so I told myself I imagined it. I turned the music back up and leaned back in my chair. A minute later, I heard it again. This time, I turned the music off completely. I sat there, listening. After a few seconds, I heard it clearly. A man's voice. "Hey, over here." It was coming from the woods. Not deep inside them, either. Maybe 20 or 30 yards back. Close enough that it carried clearly across the yard. I didn't think he was talking to me at first. I assumed it was kids messing around, or someone walking through the woods. Then the voice came again. "Hey, over here. We need help." That's when I felt my stomach tighten. The voice was too deep to be a kid. And the words "we need help" made the situation feel different. He wasn't yelling randomly. He was calling out, deliberately. I leaned forward in my chair, staring into the darkness between the trees. Then he spoke again. "Straight in front of you. Please, come help us." There was no doubt now. He was talking to me. Against my better judgment, I responded. "Who is that?" I called out. The answer came immediately. "We just need help," he said. "We're stuck in the woods." That didn't make sense to me, but I didn't question it out loud. Instead, I asked, "What do you mean, stuck?" "Just please come help," the voice replied. "Straight in front of you." I stood up. Looking back, I don't know why. Maybe it was the weed. Maybe it was how calm the voice sounded. Maybe it was the idea that someone could actually need help. I walked down the steps of the deck and onto the grass, moving slowly toward the woods. "I'm coming," I called out. "Where are you?" The response came instantly. "Right in front of you. I see you." That sentence sent a chill through me. I stopped walking. I asked one more question. "Are you alone, or are you with someone?" There was no answer. That silence told me everything. A bad feeling settled deep in my gut. Something about the situation suddenly felt wrong, dangerously wrong. I started walking backward toward the house, careful not to turn my back on the trees. The voice never spoke again. And that was the scariest part. If he truly needed help, he would have said something. Anything. Instead, it felt like he knew I had figured it out. I made it back onto the deck and went inside, locking every door behind me. I sat in the living room, trying to calm myself down. I was still high, and I think that's why I had trusted the situation at first. Weed made me relaxed. Too relaxed. That's when I heard the voice again. This time, it wasn't coming from the woods. It was closer. Definitely in the backyard now. I heard water splashing. Not a lot, just enough to notice. It could have been the pool. Or the pond. My heart started pounding as I hurried to the window. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I heard him again. "I see you," he said, followed by a quiet laugh. That's when I spotted him. He was crouched behind the pool, on the far side of the yard. I could only see his head peeking out. It was too dark to make out his face, but I could see dark, medium-length hair. I closed the blinds immediately. I told myself not to engage. People like that want a reaction. I thought if I ignored him, he'd leave. Then the banging started. Violent. Sudden. Right against the window I had just closed. At the same time, he started screaming. "Help! Help me!" Something in me snapped. I screamed back at the top of my lungs. "Fuck OFF! You freak! The police are coming!" I repeated it over and over, trying to sound louder, more unhinged than him. On the other side of the glass, I heard laughter. Slowly, it faded away. I collapsed onto the couch, shaking, out of breath, my heart racing. Eventually, everything went quiet. And somehow, I still slept that night. Weed helps with that. But I've always wondered how differently things might have gone if I hadn't been high. If I had trusted my instincts sooner. If I had never stepped off that deck. That night changed the way I think about voices in the dark. Because sometimes, when someone calls for help, they're not lost. They're just trying to see how close you're willing to come. I didn't think about that night for a long time. Not consciously, at least. Life moved on. I graduated. I moved out. I got older. The house in Newark eventually stopped being my house and became just another place from my past. My parents sold it a few years later. New owners moved in. The woods were probably still there, but they weren't mine anymore. I told myself the whole thing had been a one-off. Some random person. Some sick thrill-seeker who picked the wrong house on the wrong night. That explanation worked. Until it didn't. This happened about 8 years later. I was in my early 20s, living on my own in a small rental outside the city. Different house. Different neighborhood. No woods behind me this time. Just a narrow backyard and a tree line that belonged to a different property. I hadn't thought about the man from the woods in years. Not until the night I heard the voice again. It was late. Around midnight. I remember because I had just turned off the TV and was getting ready for bed. The house was quiet in that hollow way rentals tend to be. Thin walls, unfamiliar sounds. I brushed my teeth, shut off the bathroom light, and stood there in the dark hallway for a second longer than necessary. That's when I heard it. Not loud. Not close. But unmistakable. A man's voice, coming from outside. "Hey, over here." My stomach dropped immediately. I stood perfectly still, listening. Every hair on my arms stood up. The voice wasn't exactly the same, but it was close enough that my brain filled in the rest. I told myself I was being paranoid. Different house. Different town. Years later, I moved slowly toward the back window and looked out. The yard was empty. The porch light illuminated the grass just enough to show there was no one standing there. Beyond that, it was darkness. I exhaled, shaking my head at myself. Then the voice came again. "We need help." It wasn't shouted. It was said calmly, casually, like he knew someone was listening. I backed away from the window. I didn't respond. I didn't open the door. I didn't step outside. I had learned that lesson a long time ago. Instead, I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it through the window and across the yard. Nothing. I stood there for several minutes, heart pounding, waiting for another sound. It never came. Eventually, I convinced myself it was someone nearby, maybe drunk, maybe lost, maybe messing around. I locked the doors, checked the windows, and went to bed. But I didn't sleep well. The next morning, I tried to laugh it off. Coincidence. My brain reaching for old fears. That worked. For a while. About 2 weeks later, I was driving home late from work. As I pulled into my driveway, my headlights swept across the yard, and for just a split second, I thought I saw someone standing near the fence line. When I slammed on the brakes and looked again, there was nothing there. That night, I didn't hear any voices, but I felt watched. It was subtle, easy to dismiss, but it followed me through the house, the feeling that something had noticed me again. A few nights after that, I was sitting on my couch scrolling through my phone when I heard movement outside my back window. Footsteps. Slow. Unhurried. I didn't look. I stayed perfectly still, my phone screen dimmed, my breathing shallow. Then I heard it. Closer this time. I see you. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just sat there, frozen, staring at my reflection in the dark window. There was no laughter this time. No banging. Just the sound of footsteps slowly moving away. I called the police that night. They showed up. Walked the yard. Checked the fence line. Found nothing. No footprints. No signs of forced entry. No witnesses. The officer asked if I had any reason to believe someone was targeting me. I didn't know how to answer that. Because how do you explain that you don't think this is random? I moved a month later. Different place. Different layout. More lights. Neighbors closer together. And for a long time, nothing happened. But even now, years after that, I don't respond to voices outside. I don't investigate sounds in the dark. I don't assume someone calling for help is being honest. Because the part that still bothers me isn't that I heard a voice again. It's what the voice said. Not where I lived. Not what I was doing. Just, I see you. The same thing he said years ago. Which means one of two things. Either I've been very unlucky twice, or whatever stood in those woods that night never needed directions. It already knew who I was. After the second encounter, I stopped telling people about it. Not because they wouldn't believe me, but because every time I tried to explain it out loud, it sounded wrong. Disconnected. Like pieces of a story that didn't belong together. Different house. Different town. Years apart. There was no logical thread. So I did what most people do. I moved on. I avoided quiet places at night. I kept lights on. I never responded to voices outside. If someone yelled for help, I called the police and stayed inside. Time passed. Years. And slowly, the fear dulled into something quieter. Something easier to live with. Until the third time. This happened last year. My parents had moved again by then, downsizing into a smaller place closer to town. The old house in Newark, the one with the woods, had been sold years ago. I hadn't been back since my parents left. I didn't plan on going back that night. I was driving home late after visiting a friend when my phone died. No GPS. No music. Just road noise and darkness. I missed a turn without realizing it. Then another. Eventually, I saw a familiar road sign. Newark. Licking County. I remember slowing down without thinking. The name alone stirred something in my chest. I hadn't been there in years, but my body recognized it before my mind did. I don't know why I did it. But I turned. I told myself I just wanted to see the house. Just drive past it. Prove to myself that it was normal. That it was just a building now, with new people and new memories. The road was still quiet. Almost unchanged. Same long stretches of darkness. Same tree lines pressing in on both sides. When I pulled up near the house, my stomach tightened. The deck was still there. The woods were still there. The yard looked smaller than I remembered, but darker. No lights were on inside the house. I sat in my car for a moment, engine running, headlights washing over the front of the place I grew up. I felt like I was trespassing on my own memory. Then I heard it. Not outside. Inside my head. That same calm, familiar voice. Hey, over here. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. I told myself it was stress. Fatigue. Memory playing tricks on me. Then my headlights flickered. Just once. And in that instant of dimness, I saw movement in the backyard. Someone standing near the tree line. Not moving. Just waiting. I didn't get out of the car. I should have driven away immediately. Instead, I rolled the window down an inch. I don't know why. The voice came again, clearer now. Straight in front of you. The exact words. The same ones from years ago. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I whispered, without meaning to, "Why me?" There was a pause. Then the voice answered, "Because you came when I called." Something shifted inside me then. A realization I didn't want. I remembered how easily I had stepped off that deck as a teenager. How I had trusted the voice. How close I had come. The man in the yard took a step forward. Just one. My headlights illuminated him more clearly now. And for the first time, I noticed something I hadn't before. He wasn't facing the house. He was facing me. "You didn't help," he said. Not angry. Almost amused. "But you listened." I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. "I don't understand." He laughed quietly. Not wheezing. Not loud. Comfortable. "You think that house was the point," he said. "It wasn't." He took another step. I was just seeing who would answer. My phone suddenly turned on by itself. 1% battery. A single notification lit the screen. A voicemail. Timestamped July 2013. The night my parents left town. Hands shaking, I opened it. There was no greeting. No background noise. Just breathing. Then, "I see you." I floored the gas. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't stop until I reached a gas station miles away. I stayed there until sunrise. The next day, I called the police. Told them everything. They checked the property. They found nothing. No man. No footprints. No record of anyone matching my description. But the voicemail was still on my phone. I deleted it. I've moved again since then. Different city. Different routine. Different life. But sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I think about what he said. About how he never chased me. Never broke in. Never needed to. Because the truth is, he didn't follow me from the woods. I carried him with me when I answered.